Hey guys, this is John. All right, I'm back against Blitz or DDD. This is Grandmaster Daniil Dubov, and I took the first three games, but this is a new one, a new match we're now playing. F4. Okay, so he might be trying to trap my bishop somehow with G4 and then later F5, but I don't think it's going to work really for him at the moment. So I kind of just want to play knight BD7. I could also play like knight FD7. You know, this could be interesting. Let's try it. I'm going to have my queen observe the knight on H4 and maybe go bishop E7 just to try to force his knight to do something. So he brings that knight over. All right. Well, now I'm going to play C5 and try to get this knight to C6. This is what I'm up to. Yeah, he's very persistent. He wants G4. He desperately wants to get that move in. So let's get ready to drop our bishop back. Should he play that? Now, again, he could rush forward with F5, but... Alright, he's going to do this instead. Does that drop a pawn? So if I take... Okay, let's take first of all. If he takes, can I take on E4? And then if he takes with the queen, I take H4. My bishop could get shut out of play, though, if this happens. It seems like a lot of effort to go through to win a pawn, but bishop takes E4 is certainly a move I'd have to look at here. Bishop takes, queen takes, bishop takes, and then G5, I believe, would be the important thing to analyze. Bishop G3. Bishop's really precariously placed. I don't know if I like that. But then again, I might have to go for something like this, because if I don't, I feel like I'm going to get run over. I could play knight D4 maybe and go after F3 and also C2. Knight D4, F5, however. That could produce some unclear positions. You know what? Let's try that, though. This could be interesting. Let's see if he wants to let me take on C2. So let's say F5, knight takes C2, queen F2, knight takes A1, F takes G6, H takes G6. I gotta watch F7. And white will probably win my knight in the corner, but still, I'm optimistic about that. So he's just going to take there. All right, let's recapture. I don't think I mind him taking on D4 necessarily. If I had taken C2, he would move his queen and then take my rook on H8, so I don't think that was any good. It's currently about 1:30 my time, 1:30 in the afternoon. So Dubov must be playing fairly late in Russia. Evening. Not too late, I guess. Okay, queen F2. Just queen C7 makes sense. Let's play that. Gotta speed up. I have a minute left already. Trying to understand what he's been up to in the opening. And he has the bishop pair. I don't think black is much worse, if at all, here. I have certain play against his king side. E5. Okay, so probably time to take, huh? Yeah, let's do that. I kind of want to go for G5, to be quite honest. I think that would be a lot of fun. But let's guard B8. Let's be rational here. Yeah, G5 might be pushing it to try to destabilize. Let's just castle. I'll keep G5 in my back pocket. Maybe knight B6. Maybe I can kind of probe him on D5 or C4. He's got that bishop pair. That bishop pair is a concern. Maybe he can go F5 here, actually. F5 would be somewhat nasty. Okay, let's go here. I'm going to try for bishop C5. See if we can look to swap those dark square bishops. Okay, let's do this. And if bishop G3, I'm going to go knight D5 and look for play involving knight E3. Knight E3 is the threat. So he covers that. I definitely think he's gearing up for F5. Okay, let's go here. I'm going to probe B2. He might just say, you know, have my queen side. I'm going for F5. In which case, I probably have to ignore it and just take on B2. 30 seconds left for me. Knight E3 could be played here too. So let's keep that in mind, that I have knight E3. Actually, that's annoying for him. Maybe on F5 I don't take B2. Instead, I play knight E3. That might be the better way of playing it. It's a lot to calculate. He's going to go for it. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's take here. Let's take here. Let's go here. Try to neutralize his dark square presence. Let's go here. So if queen h6, I have queen f8. Let's go here. All right. This is going to get unpleasant, perhaps. We'll find out. Queen h6 would be really nice. That would be a very nice trade. Looks like I'm not going to be able to achieve that. Let's try to run. So he's going to win our queen, but he has no time left. Got him on the clock. All right, so I survived on the clock. Oh, and he logged out again. I'm going to wait for a second to see if he logs back in. He seems to be one of these players who maybe gets a little frustrated after the game and logs out. I don't pass any judgment on that. People have different ways of dealing with losses and whatnot, but it is kind of annoying if you're playing a match with someone and they log back in, log back out. Maybe he's having connection problems for all I know, but all right, so this was rather interesting the way he set up his position with like h3, or sorry, knight h4, attacking my bishop on f5, and then h3 followed by f4. I don't think the pawn storm was as fearsome as it looked on the king side, but I do see the value in playing this way. I mean, white is kind of playing to cramp this bishop on g6. I think this is a key moment right here, and in fact, let me go into examine mode. Let's flip this around just so we can see it from our perspective. So knight h4 right here, chasing the bishop. I was expecting him to play simply g4 straight away. Although I think knight fd7 is a good antidote to that move, attacking the knight, so that if he takes h5, we can take h4. So he instead played f4, and I went knight fd7 anyways. Let's just see what the computer likes here. Bishop c5 check. I thought about that move, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to commit my bishop to the c5 square so early. Now the engine wants to go g5. Yeah, it's not a move I would think of normally. Take, queen takes, and the point is I'm attacking g3. I am putting myself in the way of discovered attacks, potentially. Yeah, I don't know about that. But bishop e7 hitting the knight. Knight d to f3. And then I went for c5. So since I can't develop the knight through d7, I think it's better to do this and try to get the knight out this way. Okay, so all this was played. And here I can try knight d4 rather than save my bishop. So if knight d4, what if he takes here? We take c2, we get this fork. Let's say queen g3 because white should stay defending the knight here. Knight takes a1. Sometimes I think the engines do overestimate these positions for the side that wins the rook in the corner, because this knight oftentimes is lost. Although here, white is not covering the c2 square, so maybe the engine believes I can get my knight out later through that, and white won't be able to win it with something like b3 and bishop b2. Who knows? But I just pulled the bishop back to g6, and he played e4. And here I did spend some time coming up. Yeah, this one move cost me like 45 seconds deciding what to do. Because I was debating bishop takes e4, and then queen takes e4, and then take here. But I rejected it because I thought g5 would cut off my bishop, and I didn't relish the prospect of having to bring the bishop to g3. That seemed really pretty sketchy. And there also might even be stronger moves for white, like f5. Yeah, this is a lot of effort to go through just to win a pawn, and there's no telling that I won't just fall under a massive attack here, basically. So, knight d4, he took on g6, I took back. Queen f2. And I think after the position somewhat stabilizes here, white must be slightly better. They've got the two bishops plus space. But you know what? I've played a lot of these positions for black where you have a compact position. It's not one where black can just sit back forever and hope to hold the game. But it is hard for white to like find weaknesses in white's position. You can see that my pawn structure, while I only have one pawn beyond even the 5th rank, is pretty tight. And if we cover b7, if we cover f7, if we're wary of stuff like f5, I mean, at least white's not going to walk all over us. c4 does seem like a good move, as the engine is suggesting here, trying to restrict black a little bit. Yeah, that way I can't play c4 myself later, because it seemed like he gave me too much play when I was able to play, like here, knight b6, and then I played for c4 later. Now I have bishop c5 on the way. I do wonder if white missed a chance for, let's say, f5. Like, what if f5 right here? This is a moment where I was kind of worried about it. Point being, I can't take on e5 because of bishop f4, and he's skewering my queen to my rook. Once my pawn is on c4, however, I always have queen c5 check in this position, which could be less clear. So maybe if white's going to play f5, this was the time to do it. f5 immediately on this move. G takes, queen takes, here, queen takes. So the engine wants to sacrifice an exchange. And I do get a couple pawns for it. But white is ultimately for choice here. Yeah, I would agree with that. So bishop f2, c4, bishop c5. Yeah, now I started to feel okay about my position. Like, now I'm coordinated. Knight d5 carries with it the knight e3 threat. He covered that with this. I played queen b6 attacking here. Also, knight into e3 is threatened. And he just went for it with f5. And now it turned into just a slop fest, basically. I win the exchange, but with him having 18 seconds, me having 30, me being under attack, I mean, almost anything can happen. I definitely like black's chances here, though. I feel like I've survived, and as long as I control g7 and make sure he can't, like, sneak in with his queen and mate me on g7, I'm not going to lose instantly. That said, I'm sure I missed some better way to play it. Queen d2 would have been very convenient right here. That's a good move, because that way I stop queen h6 altogether, and I also play an active move. Queen f8 was passive. Queen f8 was giving white a reason to go forward on the king side, and all my pieces are stuck on the back rank here. Yeah, I'm not surprised that the computer now thinks that white is at least equal. Yeah, and as it turned out, probably just winning. Here I avoided g7 because of queen e5, but he found this rook lift idea. Yeah, this is not good. I guess I might have some way I can play to get out of this, but I'm not going to find it in time pressure, most likely. But fortunately, he had no time, and I was able to flag him. That's the way it goes in 3-minute, no increment. So, yeah, so this one was rather intriguing. I'm going to have to remember this idea, h3, f4. I've seen this before in a couple games, but I don't think I've faced it before. So, perhaps black should be looking to play more aggressively against that. I mean, the computer suggestion of g5 is pretty interesting right here. Not a move you'd be likely to play in Blitz, but it does feel like once the position stabilized that white should be better with the two bishops in space edge, though. Okay, he doesn't appear to be back, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take a look at the other two games that I didn't have a brief look at in the last video, since this video only had one game against Blitz or DDD. So this was the second game that we played. I was black. And again, it was this kingside fianchetto for white. And he played queen b3, which I think is a good move order, because if white plays d3 directly, black does get a chance to take on c4. And then I had a game against international master Mark Ginsburg at this recent tournament in Las Vegas, the North American Open. And I happen to think this position is acceptable for black. I've looked at this a few times from the white side, and I don't see much of an advantage for white because the c5 square is so nice for black to use. So he played queen b3. I played queen b6 to guard the b7 pawn. Both developed. He played bishop e3. And I mentioned during the game that this is some theory. Like, I'm certain that this position has been reached several times before. I think trading the dark square bishops is helpful for black. Queen a3 is mildly annoying because he is kind of x-raying down this diagonal, but that said, I don't think black should be any worse. a5 in my mind is a useful move because it stops b4. So we both just completed our development. Here he's threatening to take on d5, and his rook would be joining up with the queen and attacking this knight. So I played the knight back to d7. That seems to be the way to go. It looks more coherent than a move like this. I also wanted to take away the d4 square from white's knight so he can't come in here and attack the bishop on f5. So I played knight cd7. He played knight h4. I went and attacked e2. I played for a trade. Now the engine's slightly preferring black here. I don't know how big of an advantage it really is. It's about a quarter pawn. I did have to give up my bishop, so now he has bishop and knight versus two knights, but given the closed nature of the position, I think this is all right for black. I don't see any big problems here. Rook a5. I thought activating the rooks on the queen side would be good because I didn't see where else they would be useful, at least in the short term. I think this position is very close to equal. d4. I played rook b6. Maybe my play can be improved right around here because I felt like I didn't have much of a plan at this stage. But quite possibly black just has to wait and see how white is going to play the position. Yeah, d4 makes a lot of sense. I mean, now he has options with c5, and also he has this long-term plan of playing e3 and bishop f1 and trying to free his bishop on this f1 a6 diagonal. I think that's a decent way of playing for him. Here I brought my rook in. I was hoping the rook wouldn't get trapped, but I didn't see how white would easily do that. So, yeah, like he played knight d2, but I can always come back out this way. e3. Going for e5 seems good. Now that the position has been locked up, I need some counterplay. And even though I don't want to open the position too much in view of white's bishop, I think a pawn break like this is good against this particular pawn structure. It's better than b6 because b6 might create problems for me after bishop f1. So, like I saw this line in the game and then take, and he's on my c6 pawn. So I think playing for e5, which also might enable knight f8 to e6 with pressure on d4 is helpful. So e5, bishop f1, rook ba5, f4. I thought about closing it down further with e4, but I really wanted some open avenues to work with, so I did this and then played g6. Grabbing the file with rook e8 is also suggested by the engine. Yep, probably a good move. Bishop d3, knight f8. Now, I had a feeling he would play f5 because he wants to stop my knight from coming here to attack d4. And this trade, even though it slightly fractures my pawns, I think it's worth it to get the knight here. Maybe he should just not take on e6 at this stage and instead just play knight f3 and, yeah, guard this pawn. Then he could look forward to bringing his rooks over to, like, the e or maybe even the f files and target this knight while keeping this pawn constantly defended. That looks like a good way of playing. I can play knight g7, hit his bishop, bishop d3, rook e8, get on the file. Now, black is not much worse, but somewhat worse. Probably in view of these pawns, mainly. Instead, he took, and this seemed to work out all right for me, especially when I got an e5. I think white underestimated or just missed that I could play e5. Like here he played knight b1, and that looks to be a bad move in view of this freeing advance. And this is thematic, right? Because I have a backward pawn, a backward e6 pawn. I don't want my rook to babysit that pawn indefinitely. I want to get that advanced and try to destabilize his pawn structure. So that's why I played that move right now. And if he took with a pawn, I play knight d7, and both of these pawns are under attack. Moreover, like say he saves this one, take. This pawn is definitely a weakness rather than a strength. A lot of times you'd be scared about a passed pawn that's on like your 6th or 7th rank if you're black, but like if he plays e7 here, I can play at the very least knight e4, stop his rook from defending that pawn on e7, and I'm getting rook takes e7 in next. So I think this is where the game turned greatly in my favor. Yeah, now I take here. We trade rooks. And he can't even bring his knight to a logical square, because if knight e2, there's d3 forking the knight and the rook. So that's no good. So he has to play knight d1 or knight b1, neither of which is looking great for him. And he's got to waste so much time rerouting this knight again, and meanwhile I went after this pawn. Played d3 to hold my d-pawn and attack his rook. Now I think I'm just up 2 clean pawns. He's got nothing to show for it. Also, b2 remains weak. That's why I can get away with rook b5. He can't go knight d4 to try to drive away my rook from defending the knight, because this is check. So black's just gonna win. And he resigned at this stage. So I liked my play in this game. I think I showed some good patience in this one. At no time did it feel like white had anything major. Probably the best position that white had was right about here, with his slight space edge, and it was a little unclear what my rooks were doing on the queen side. But I feel like once I got in the e5 break, things started to work nicely for me. And this maneuver in particular, knight f8, e6, attacking d4, is timely for black, because this pawn is unstable on d4, and if I can bring around my knight to attack it, that bodes well for my counterplay. Okay, let's take a look at the one other game that we have not looked at. So this was the Nimzo-Indian game. I played my queen c2 line, which I usually play against the Nimzo. And b6 is a trendy move that's been played increasingly over the past about a year, maybe longer. And I faced it against Grandmaster Tal Baron in London. So my game from the London Chess Classic. And that game was a draw. Dubov played it like Baron did. We got this position. And I was having trouble remembering that game, but yeah, I'm pretty sure knight ge2 was the move I played also in that one. Take and take. Now, I think... How did the game with Baron go? I want to say he played just like d6 here. Is that what... Okay, Dubov castled, but I think Baron played d6. And then I played bishop f4, I believe, targeting the d6 pawn. So this game went slightly different with black just castling. So let me add the engine in right about here. I played bishop g5, just pinning him. And he went the immediate queen e4. Maybe that's a mistake. Because it felt like after queen e4 castles that white was neatly solving all the problems. Because even though my c4 pawn is hanging, I don't think black can rightly do that when his structure is about to get ruined. Or, as the computer was just pointing out here, knight f4. And that's a trapped queen, isn't it? Our bishop suddenly joins in the attack. Yeah, and he can't go to e4 because my knight covers. Yeah, black's just busted here. +7. So he traded, but now I have a slight lead in development. These queenside pieces are a little awkward for black to develop. I'm threatening bishop takes f6. He did play knight g4 attacking f2, but after bishop h4, when he does put a pawn on d6, it's not going to be easy to defend because on g3 I control f2 and I also attack d6. So, looks nice. Maybe I could have played it better. Knight b5 immediately is more accurate. Then check. This check never really seems to bother me too much. Yeah, knight b5 immediately is kind of nice because then this bishop looks unemployed on b4. I mean, it has some influence here, but what else is it doing? It might just be a liability for black, especially if I can somehow play to trap it later. Probably won't happen, but most importantly, there's no way to defend d6 because he can't play rook d8. My bishop is still here. Yeah, so knight b5 immediately right here on move 13 would have been best. Instead, bishop g3, targeting that pawn. Bishop f5 check. I pulled the king back to c1. Thought for a second about king b3, but I just didn't want my king exposed out there. But maybe it's not so bad. Looks to be okay as well. And then he traded. The computer wants to play a6 to control this. Yeah, maybe that's better, because as played, he did not address knight b5, and I think he just missed that I can keep my bishop here and go attack the d-pawn with the knight. I think if he had seen that, he would have played a6 otherwise. Whereupon, the engine thinks white is a lot better, but black is not losing a pawn here, as far as I can tell. But once I get knight b5 in, I'm winning the d6 pawn. It got a little dicey from here. I mean, I'm sure I didn't play this stage of the game correctly. b5, he's looking to open some lines. If I take, then he gets the attack down on a2. So, I mean, I could play this way. Maybe this is not a big deal, but especially in a blitz game, you're always going to err on the side of caution when you're up material. I try not to allow like too much counterplay if I can from my opponent, but I mean here the rook activity is somewhat of an illusion. It's not really that bad. So instead, bishop d3 I played. I'm just going to scroll through these moves kind of fast. I was just trying to stabilize my pawn structure. Now here I really want to go knight e4, but the problem is he always takes here, and my knight that was on d6 is no longer defending that pawn. So that's why I embarked on this rather slow plan of bringing up my king to help defend c4. And even though it's time-consuming, I don't think black can really take advantage of it, because my knight on d6 kind of controls proceedings, and everything else is stabilized. He doesn't have too many targets. So to me, this just looked like one of the best ways to play to defend this pawn and then free up my knight with knight e4 without dropping c4. Yeah, the engine seems to like it too. Knight e4, so finally I get to go and attack this. He did climb back in the game here. I'm pretty sure I didn't play this right. Like, I'm not sure this whole knight back to d6 and then trade rooks operation was in my best interest. But again, when you're playing a blitz game and you're up a small amount of material and time is a factor, you're probably mostly going to be trying to keep it safe, play to simplify, and not allow much counterplay. And I thought trading a pair of rooks would be helpful. And here I decided to play knight c7 before black got a chance to play king f8. So I give back the pawn, but his queenside pawns are vulnerable. And I went after them. Maybe I should have attacked it via d6, though, because that would have stopped rook c6. And if rook a7, then I come here and get behind the pawn. And if a5, I can bring this rook over, and he might make a break for something like this, trying to get to the second rank. But actually, that could be similar to the game. Something like this, and then eventually I hide my king, and when I take this pawn, I'll be threatening c5. He might be able to somehow draw, though, by playing actively. But maybe not. Maybe I just, go after the b pawn at some stage. Yeah, this is a win. Mostly it was just a time scramble at this point. We had equal time, and I was just playing not to lose on time. It repeated a little bit, and then I played for the win, took here, and he resigned here. A bit premature with the time scramble, but I think he wasn't liking his position. Down a pawn in the rook ending. So I think we exploited black's mistake with queen e4 in the opening pretty well. This position just looks to be awesome for white. So yeah, if black plays this line, I think they got to play h6 in this position. I remember looking at this with Tall Baron, actually, after the game. He mentioned this line as a possibility. Okay, so I went through all the games. I analyzed the first game in the previous video right at the end. On the whole, I liked the way I played in this short match, and I'm very happy to have gotten in some games with Grandmaster Dubov. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this match. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.